So you're thinking of living here in Jacksonville, Florida, but you don't know where to start your home search? Well, in this video, we're going to give you all the information about the different neighborhoods and areas here in Jacksonville, going over what makes them all uniquely different from each other and why or why not these different neighborhoods may make sense for you and your family as you relocate here. So without wasting any more time, let's get right on into this video. So when you're starting off on your move here to Jacksonville, there's a lot to kind of take in because of the fact that we have the largest city land-wise in the continental United States. And what that brings with it is it brings a lot of different areas and neighborhoods that really make it a little bit tough at first to figure out, where makes the most sense for you and your family to live in. And obviously, a lot of things you have to take into account are, what are you moving to Jacksonville for? Is it for friends or family? If so, you may want to be closer to them rather than further away. Maybe it's for work. Well, definitely work. Sometimes I hear it all the time where people want to be within 30 minutes of their job. And so that definitely gives you a wide area, but not as wide of an area as you think here in Jacksonville. Other times I hear that people want to be close to the beach. Maybe not necessarily at the beach, but close to the beach. So again, that will factor into what neighborhoods and areas may make the most sense for you and your family when it comes to living here in Jacksonville. And keep in mind, as we're going through this video, if there's any questions you have about any specific areas or neighborhoods that we discuss in this video, do not hesitate to call me, text me, email me. It's gonna be on the screen, really easy to find. And we can go over anything you and your family have as far as questions are about here in Jacksonville. In addition, don't forget to like, subscribe, and ring the bell on this video. Definitely helps us grow our channel, so always appreciated. But starting off, as you'll see here, we do have a map here of Jacksonville. And with this map, the biggest things I want to focus on is we have 4 main counties that make up Jacksonville, which is going to be Duval County, which is going to be more specific to Jacksonville, so it's going to be more, this section, for the most part, a little bit out there. We have Nassau County, which is to the north. We won't focus too much on Nassau today because of the fact that, that's going to be more Ferdinand Beach, Amelia Island, a little bit different area, different pocket here in Jacksonville. And then we also have St. Johns County to the south and Clay County to the southwest. So those will definitely be areas that we'll focus on with this because a lot of people who live in Jacksonville or maybe they work in Jacksonville sometimes or a lot of times choose to live in Clay or St. Johns County due to the schools and a couple other features that we will go over later on in this video. But starting off, for what is considered more central Jackson, which is going to be your Duval County, we have quite a bit of neighborhoods to get into. First is going to be your Northside Jacksonville. So Northside Jacksonville is going to give you a lot of times larger homes, larger lots in some cases, typically more newer construction up there compared to other parts of Jacksonville. But what is really enticing a lot of times for people who want to be up the north side is the fact that you do have the airport close by, you do have a massive Amazon facility, so a lot of people who work at that Amazon facility tend to obviously want to be somewhat close to work, but also pricing on the north side for those homes, sometimes you do see them in a more affordable price point compared to other areas of Jackson that we'll go over in this video, as well as parts of St. Johns County as well. The downside of the north side is the fact that, unless you're, working somewhere up there, a lot of times you're going to have to travel further south to more downtown Jacksonville or more maybe East Jacksonville. So drive times can be a little bit longer and it's always going to require you to cross a bridge, which for some people is not a big deal, but others don't like to cross bridges. And the specific bridge that a lot of times you'll see having to be crossed is going to be the Dames Point Bridge, which is the only suspension bridge here in Jacksonville. Now keep in mind, Jacksonville is known as the 7 bridges because we do have 7 major bridges that do cross the St. Johns River, but only one of them, the Dames Point Bridge, is a suspension bridge, which is kind of a cool, fun fact. And I'll try to provide more fun facts throughout this video as we go through it all. From the north side though, again, positives are going to be affordability, size of homes. You're still going to have fairly new construction up there, but the downside is you may be further away from a lot of the things that you're going to want to do on a day-to-day basis or on the weekends or work related. So something to take into account when you're living on the north side. Then we're going to dive into the west side of Jacksonville. So just like the name implies with the north side, the west side is going to put us more, west Jacksonville area over here. And the west side of Jacksonville is going to typically be characterized by even more affordability compared to, say, the north side. But also with the west side, you're going to see a difference in the fact that these are going to typically be older homes. There are some newer construction neighborhoods within the west side, but generally speaking, most of these homes are going to be anywhere from the 1970s to the 1990s, with some in the 1960s range. So typically when you are thinking about what area may make the most sense for your family, that is going to give you an older demographic in a lot of cases, but also older homes, which while they do have tons of curb appeal, they may not necessarily be the most affordable on the insurance side of things due to their age. Because insurance is playing a big role on affordability here in Jacksonville and really Florida as a whole. And it's been that way for the last couple of years, and it's expected to be that way in the future too. So if you want to know more on why insurance is playing such a huge role, again, just reach out to me and we'll go over all of that as well. But with the west side, you are in a similar fashion as the north side, where you are going to be further away from certain things. So if you do like to go, be around water and you want to be able to go to the beach quite often, it's going to put you a good 45 minutes away from most of the local beaches here, whether if it's Atlantic, Neptune, Jax, or Ponte Vedra Beach. In addition, a lot of the different places that you may be working could be a bit of a drive, but if you're military and you're relocating here, what I will say with the west side is if you're working at NAS Jax, which is one of the 2 Navy bases here in Jacksonville, you actually are in a very convenient location because of the fact that the west side puts you within 10-15 minutes away from the Navy base. So a great positive if you're watching this and you're looking at military relocation. Another negative with the west side, and you'll see it with the north side too, is the school ratings in these areas typically, at least for the high school side of things, may not be as high as you would expect. And that is going to be a common thing throughout Duval County portion of Jacksonville, with some variations here and there. But in general, that is a lot of times reasons why I see people tend to gravitate more towards East Side Jacksonville or Clay or St. Johns County, is because of the school ratings for the west side. So just something to take into account if you're watching this and you have a family and schools are very important to you. I always highly recommend going to great schools or other websites like that to get a better feel of what the ratings are. But in general, we do tend to see Jacksonville, more that central Duval County, a little bit lower than, say Clay or St. Johns County. But that's going to take us from the west side to now some really niche areas that you're not going to miss. Let's get into those right now. So one of the cool things about Jacksonville is, even though, in some regards people consider or people think of Jacksonville as a newer city, what's really awesome is that there are some more historic areas within Jacksonville that still hold a lot of history. And it shows that not just in the different landmarks in those areas, but also in the homes in those areas. And we tend to see a lot of times people, if it's younger couples or younger families that want to have a lot of walkability to things, tend to focus their searches on these specific areas. So let's go and get into those right now. With those areas, or these niche areas as mentioned, we're going to have what's called the Riverside Avondale area located here in Jacksonville, but we're also going to have across the river the San Marco area. They're both relatively small in size, but they hold a huge impact here because of the history and the wealth that does get associated with those areas, specifically the homes on the river. But these areas are definitely defined by the historic aspect, and a lot of times you're going to see these homes in these areas be more anywhere from 1910s to 1920s, 1930s. So definitely, if you're wanting to move here to Jacksonville and you want something that's a newer construction home, these areas may not be the right fit for you, just to be fully transparent and honest. There are some occasional newer homes in these areas, but most of the time people tend to gravitate and live in these areas because of that older home, aspect of everything being very unique in their features. But in addition, when we look at like Riverside Avondale, you're gonna see here, just a lot of walkability with some of these areas, a lot of older homes, just different aspects across the board. There's a lot of preservation going on in these areas specifically for the homes to keep that older uniqueness of the homes. But overall, these are definitely areas that we see people gravitate to, mainly because of the age and the uniqueness or niche of these communities. Again, tends to be a younger demographic, but we do tend to see in both these areas that there is a good mixture across the board. And part of why people like it is, again, you can walk or bike to a lot of restaurants and shops within these areas, which is not something you can say about most of Jacksonville. Most of Jacksonville is going to be more of a driving community, and that's where, if you're not familiar with Jacksonville, understand that public transportation, while it's there, is probably not the route you're going to want to go, and therefore you will have to have at least one vehicle per household when living here in Jacksonville. But overall, if you want to know more about those areas, just reach out to me. I can go over San Marco and Riverside Avondale a little bit more. But then that's now going to take us to more East Jacksonville. So in East Jacksonville, we're going to categorize this by really 4 distinct areas. We have the beaches, we have East Jacks, or Intercoastal West as they sometimes call it. We have Arlington, which is an older area, Southside, and if I said 4, I meant 5. But the 5th one's going to be your Mandarin area. So with these areas, they all do give you a little bit something different, but they still give you the general location that tends to be what brings people to that specific area of Jacksonville, which is you're very close to the St. John's Town Center, which we're just going to mark that as an X right here. And the St. John's Town Center is going to be almost like the hub of Jacksonville. And even though you would think, okay, the downtown may be the hub, other cities that may be the case, here in Jacksonville, the St. John's Town Center is really where people gravitate towards because of the walkability of all the restaurants, all the shops, and there is a huge amount of options there, no matter what you're trying to do for the day, to be able to hang out at the St. John's Town Center and meet with friends or family there as well. So it really is where people tend to come from, whether if they're on the north side, west side, even parts of St. John's, Clay County, the beaches. That really is one of the more focal points of living here in Jacksonville. It does bring a negative. During certain times of the year in St. John's Town Center, it does get a little bit busy with traffic because there is that much interest in people being there, whether it's for shopping for the holidays or just because they have the time off and it's to hang out. So just keep that in mind. It does get a little congested. But overall, for these 5 main areas, we're going to start with Arlington. And Arlington is going to be probably the oldest of these 5 areas as far as the age of the homes. And really the positives of Arlington is to be east of the river. It is going to give you very much affordable homes. The affordability there is going to be a little bit better than, say, the beaches or Mandarin or East Jacksonville for the most part. And Arlington is going to be categorized by a lot of brick and block houses. So whereas when we were discussing San Marco and Riverside Avondale, you do get brick and block houses there, but you also are going to get a lot of wood frame houses. Arlington's going to be predominantly brick or block houses, which, although doesn't help you a ton on the insurance side, it does help you if you're coming, say, from South Florida and you're used to having that. This is an area that does give you that because, believe it or not, all the builders nowadays, for the most part, don't really work with brick or block all that much. Most homes, most new construction here in Jacksonville is going to be wood frame. On the opposite side of that, when it comes to Arlington, it is an area where the school ratings are not going to be as high as some other areas in Jacksonville. So that isn't that, again, if you're moving here and schools are very important to you, I definitely would say do your research. Great Schools is a great source here to kind of give you an idea, but realistically that is going to be an area where you're going to see maybe the ratings go down some for the schools. On the flip side, you do have multiple private schools to choose from and charter schools to choose from. So if you want to go over all that and more, just got to reach out to me. But overall, these are going to be 1960s homes, some 1970s homes, maybe some 1980s. And overall, these typically will be somewhat smaller houses, and because they are older, Sometimes they can be a little chopped up, a little bit more less open concept, as they say. So that is something that you are seeing a lot of people who are moving to the Arlington area or living there currently. You're seeing a lot of renovations happening to these homes to kind of bring them up into what most people in today's world tend to kind of want. So not saying that that's going to always be the case, but you do see that in different areas of Arlington. As far as South Side, right below Arlington, South Side is going to put you very conveniently located at St. John's Town Center. A lot of times people prefer the South Side area because you are very centrally located for Jacksonville, having I-95, Phillips Highway, Butler Boulevard, all kind of at your disposal there to be able to get north, south, east, or west relatively quickly. But also there is a lot of corporations that do work off of Bay Meadows Road or Southside Boulevard. So for people who want to be extremely close to work, a lot of times their work may put them over in the area, and so therefore you do see a big demand for that area. In addition, there's specific neighborhoods within Southside like Deerwood and Deer Creek that are going to be your guard-gated golf course, country club communities that are very desirable for people looking to move here. From there, now also with Southside, you do see a bit more of a price uptick. First time we're really talking about that, but first time, we do have a bit of a price uptick for these areas because of the fact that there are different golf course communities in these areas. And with that tends to bring higher prices and larger homes. So some of these neighborhoods with these golf course communities, you're gonna have homes 3, 4, 5,000 square foot. So if that's something you're looking for, definitely the larger homes, you can find them in Southside and some other areas as well. Now, let's go ahead and get into the next couple areas, starting with Mandarin. Mandarin is known here in Jacksonville as being an area where you see families congregate to. And what I mean by that is a lot of times people who grow up here in Jacksonville and they grow up in Mandarin, they tend to stay in Mandarin, which is an interesting aspect that you don't always see with most neighborhoods or areas here in Jacksonville. Now, Mandarin can be categorized as having a smorgasbord of homes. You're gonna have anywhere from 1970s houses in Mandarin all the way up to brand new homes and brand new home communities in the area. So whether if you're looking for a newer home or an older home, Mandarin could be a great fit. Now, Mandarin also is going to give you a lot of waterfront property because of the fact of how it touches the St. Johns River, but also Julington Creek as well. And so again, if you're looking for something that's more of a waterfront situation, it is there. Now keep in mind, the price tends to reflect that it's waterfront, but overall you do have some different options there as well. Another reason why people like Mandarin is from the standpoint of the school ratings. As I've mentioned previously with some of the other areas, Mandarin has some of the better rated schools in Duval County when it comes to public schools. So whereas some other parts of Jackson that we've kind of referenced before, you may see families tend to go more private school or charter school or even magnet school route. Here in Mandarin, you do see a little bit more maybe of an emphasis on public school being the route that a lot of the kids tend to go for their schooling. But overall, Mandarin can be categorized as having a mixture of prices as well. So you can find homes in Mandarin anywhere from the 300,000 range all the way up to the multi-million if you're looking at waterfront. So overall, it is an area that I would categorize as very family friendly and definitely gives you tons of different options while still being fairly conveniently located to major things like the St. John's Town Center, the beaches, major highways. And the only downside, you may start to get a little bit further away from the airport if you do travel a lot. So just one thing to keep in mind there. From Mandarin, we're then going to discuss East Jacks. Now, East Jacks is going to be more so sometimes considered Intercoastal West, or as I like to call it, the Quadrant, which is going to be anywhere from Butler Boulevard up to Atlantic Boulevard, and east of 295, west of the Intercoastal Waterway. And that area is a very popular area here in Jacksonville because, like Mandarin, it has some of the better schools, ratings-wise, per grade schools. But also, most of the homes in these sections are going to be 1990s, all the way up to newer construction nowadays. And pricing for these areas are going to be anywhere from the high threes up to the multi-millions because you do have some different neighborhoods like Glen Kernan, which is again, another golf course, country club, gated community. We see a lot of football players will live in Glen Kernan, or if not, Glen Curtin, Queens Harbor. What's really cool about Queens Harbor, again, it is a gated golf course community, but it also actually has the only lock system here in Jacksonville, Florida. So as you'll see here, we actually have an image of the lock. And what the lock is there is a natural spring that feeds into this waterway that is only located within Queens Harbor. And it allows you to have much larger boats within there with having fresh water access in there, so that way it doesn't do as much damage to the bottom of the boats. And the lock system is what you would take to take the boat out into the intercoastal or bring it in from the intercoastal. So it's a very unique thing that you don't see in many different parts of the country. There's only so many neighborhoods that can actually have something like this, and Queens Harbor is one of them. So we do see a lot of people tend to gravitate towards Queens Harbor if they are boaters or have much larger boats in general that they want to be able to store behind their house. There also is a marina as well, so you don't have to have it behind your house, but there's different options there. So Queens Harbor is just one of the many communities located here in that East Jacks area. Now, one of the negatives is the price. The affordability is starting to go up more when you get into East Jacks or that intercoastal west quadrant. But overall, you do tend to see the positives outweigh the negatives when people choose to live in that section. And I am a little biased. I grew up in that section, so if you ever want to pick my brain on that, you just gotta call me, text me, email me, and I'll give you all the all the laydown or lowdown of that area. Then it brings us to the beaches. And the beaches are going to be categorized by Atlantic Beach, Neptune Beach, and Jacks Beach. And this section of Jacksonville is going to be, in some regards, the most unaffordable section, just because of the fact that we are now starting to discuss a lot of waterfront property, a lot of oceanfront property, and that mixed with the fact that we do have a lot of newer construction being built on the water where older homes are being torn down and newer homes are being built. Those newer homes are going to obviously go for a much higher price than their counterpart would have gone for in the past. But overall, this is an area where if you want to be close to the water, this is the place for you. It's just more making sure your budget, is in line with that. And the schools here are going to be kind of like Mandarin and East Jacks, where a lot of times you'll see kids in these areas go more the public school route because it does have some of the better schools, per grade schools, here in Duval County section of Jacksonville. In addition, you have the Atlantic Beach Town Center here, which has become a little bit of a hub as well here in Jacksonville in general, just because, again, you have a lot of restaurants, a lot of shops, a lot of walkability in these areas while living here. So another area to kind of focus on when you're deciding on what makes the most sense location-wise for you and your family. Now we're going to touch on a couple areas here in St. Johns and Clay County. So we're going to touch on Fleming Island, Green Cove Springs, and Middleburg out in Clay County. And then we're going to touch on Nocatee, Ponte Vedra Beach, and North St. Johns in St. Johns County. So we're going to dive into those 6 locations and the neighborhoods within some of those locations right now. So starting off with Clay County, the 3 areas we're going to focus on are Fleming Island, Middleburg, and Green Cove Springs. And these are all great areas if you're trying to be further away from the ocean, which is a thing. Not everyone moves here to be close to the beach. And overall, the biggest positive of these areas is the school system now transitions to Clay County. And as you would see with a lot of the ratings, if you look at greatschools.org, a lot of the ratings for the schools here are going to typically be, in general, higher than what you find in the Duval County section of Jacksonville. So a lot of people who don't want to necessarily maybe live in downtown Jacksonville because maybe it could be a little bit busier, they will sometimes choose Clay County because some of these areas are definitely more affordable. They still give you newer construction homes. Specifically, Green Cove Springs has a lot of brand new construction. Middleburg has some. Fleming Island is actually almost pretty much all built out, but most of those homes are going to be 1990s to 2010s. But overall, they're all categorized by good schools and fairly well priced, besides Fleming Island, which is going to only be on a bit of a higher pricing compared to, say, Middleburg or Green Cove Springs. But overall, people tend to gravitate towards these areas because of the fact that, again, you're further away from the water, affordability is pretty good, and the schools are also pretty good. the biggest reason why people don't gravitate to these areas, if there is a con to kind of go over, it is the fact that it is going to put you further away from most things that are typically categorized as things you would do in Jacksonville. So if you like to go to sporting events, you're going to be probably 45 minutes or so away from the Jacksonville Jaguar Stadium, the Jacksonville Jumbo Shrimps Baseball Stadium, Jacksonville Iceman Hockey, the arena football team we have here, the Jacksonville Sharks. So again, if sporting events or major sporting events are something that is desirable for you, you may not necessarily want to focus as much on Middleburg or Fleming or Green Cove Springs because of the drive time and distance away from those things. Also, just like if you don't want to be near the water, it's a great area for you. If you do want to be near the ocean, you are going to be putting yourself quite a bit away from the Atlantic Ocean. So something else to kind of consider when you're thinking about making your move. What I tend to see is a lot of people who tend to gravitate towards Middleburg, Fleming Island, Green Cove Springs. A lot of the reason why they do that is because they want to have more land, larger homes. That is going to be something you're going to see more in these areas. And they're okay with the drive time to get to most other attractions in Jacksonville as well. So overall, if driving's not your thing, maybe not the area, but if it is, it could be a great area due to the affordability of the homes here mixed with the ages of them. Because again, these newer homes will give you a much better insurance rate across the board. On the flip side, we then will move across the river to St. Johns County, and specifically the North St. Johns area, Nocatee, and Ponte Vedra Beach. So Ponte Vedra Beach, where the Palm Valley is on the map, that is going to be a very, very desirable area due to the multiple golf course communities there with TPC Sawgrass, where the Players Championship is played. You have the Plantations, which is a extremely private golf course country club community. And then you also have Sawgrass Country Club as well, which is on the other side of the Players TPC Sawgrass. And that also is a very unique and desirable community there as well. In addition, you do have the Ponte Vedra Inn and Club, which is a very nice attraction for people who are visiting the area. And so all of those things wrapped in together, along with having massive houses with tons of amazing features and oceanfront property, does lead to Ponte Vedra Beach being the most expensive house for house area here in Jacksonville, Florida. Something to always consider, but also, you could not be more conveniently located to the beaches. So that's something that you do want to kind of be nearby, something to definitely focus on in that area. You also have some of the best schools over in that area because in general, St. Johns County is well known, at least North St. Johns County is well known for their schools, not just here locally, but also in the whole state of Florida. Great schools will also support that, but overall, I tend to see a lot of people move to St. Johns County when they do move to Jacksonville because they're okay with driving a little bit further away, but also because of how great the schools are in these areas. Now, as we head west, we're going to then get to Nocatee. And Nocatee actually is going to expand from there. It's actually going to be more all the way down to here, makes up Nocatee. And Nocatee is well known for being really the first master planned community here in Jacksonville, Florida. And this master planned community, they held nothing back. Just like how I do, when I do these videos, I don't hold anything back. They held nothing back. And in Nocatee, you have some amazing amenities, whether it's the lazy river, the zip line, the multiple pools, the slides in there. For the pools, just amazing amenities at their splash park and their spray park that really make it a very unique community here in Jacksonville, Florida. Now, you will pay for that with the CED fees that they charge, but a lot of people see that as worth it, and we have seen some insane price growth in those areas. Now, these areas in Nocatee, are typically going to have homes anywhere from the $500,000 to $600,000 range, with occasional homes under $5. All the way up to multi-million. And the thing that categorizes them as for this area is that they're all going to be really 2010 and newer. And a lot of times they do have smaller lot sizes. So that's something that you're okay with. Could be a great fit for you. But if you do like to have a little bit more land, Nocatee may not be the best fit for you because a lot of these home sites, They max out 80 foot wide and they can get as thin as 40 feet wide. So just something to consider. Then from there, we do have North St. John's. And North St. John's is going to give you multiple neighborhoods within it, such as Rivertown, Julington Creek Plantation, Shearwater, Silverleaf, Aberdeen, Durbin Crossing, Celestina, as some of the, the main ones in this area. And North St. John's is similar to Nocatee. It's very desirable because of the fact that it has a great school system. A lot of these homes are going to be 1990s or newer, and there's a lot of new construction in these areas as well. So overall, it becomes a very much an area where people focus on because sometimes the pricing can be a little bit better than Nocatee, and you do have a lot more options at your disposal and neighborhood variety at your disposal. Because again, areas like Julington Creek Plantation are going to have some older homes, a little more of overgrown, trees and more natural landscaping. Whereas some of the newer areas like Silverleaf and Shearwater were more clear cut when the developer built out the community. And over time, you'll start to see those trees start to mature. But for now, it is a little more barren as they start to add more infrastructure there with restaurants and shops and whatnot, and homes compared to some of the others like Julington Creek where it's more developed. Overall though, they can be categorized as areas that are very family friendly. They have multiple 55 and up communities too, so if you're someone that's older watching this and you're looking to retire here, definitely could be an area to focus on. Nocatee will also give you that, by the way. They have multiple Del Webb communities in Nocatee. But overall, the only real downside with living there in North St. John's is the fact that if you work in Duval County or more considered more central Jacksonville, you are going to have to travel more often for work. Sometimes traffic can be a little bit of a pain here. And again, traveling to say like the airport or to the beaches will take you longer than some other areas and neighborhoods here in Jacksonville, Florida. So that kind of wraps up all the different areas, but let's now dive into just a little bit more before I let you guys go. So as someone who was born and raised here in Jacksonville, I am a little bit biased as far as my love for the city, but you'll see that a lot with people here when they get to Jacksonville. No matter what area, what neighborhood they end up in, that love for the city really starts to come out because of the fact that it's such a family-friendly city to live in. We always joke, Jacksonville's the biggest small town because of the fact that you could travel 30, 45 minutes in any direction, still probably be in Jacksonville. And believe it or not, you'll run into people that you know as you live here and meet more and more people. So it really does give you that small town feel. A lot of Southern hospitality here, without the accent, I'll say. And overall, it really has become a massive. We've had massive growth here over the last decade or so, because it really is starting to kind of get put on the map with the Miamis, the Orlandos, the Tampas as a major city for people to live in. So whether if you're looking for an area or neighborhood that you can get more home, more land with that home, at an affordable price, like say maybe like the north side of Jacksonville, or if you're someone who's very hyper focused on what amenities you can get and what the schools are like, such as like in Nocatee or North St. John's, or if you just want to be someone who wants to live that beach life. And again, with the beaches here or Ponte Vedra Beach, we have something to fit any of your wants and needs. So that is the beauty of a city like Jacksonville, is you have a little bit of everything just in a very large city with a small town feel. So again, if you have any questions, call me, text me, email me. I'm always happy to answer any and all questions as it pertains to your home search here in Jacksonville. And I will see you guys again in our next video.